Hello, so this short talk is really to give you an overview of the curriculum that we work to at Glasgow, and it's aligned with the curriculum set down by the General Dental Council. I think there might be bits of it that are familiar to you and bits of it that are perhaps a little bit newer. So no, we don't just do teeth. I think in two senses. One, as educators, we don't just do teeth. We also want to equip our students with a set of what we would call, I suppose, graduate attributes, where they have inquiring minds, they are good communicators, they are the leaders of the future, if you like. And also in the other sense that dentistry or dentists, if I could be so bold as to speak for the profession for a second, don't just do teeth either, they do people. So the health and well-being of patients in the widest sense is really what the profession is all about. So I'll move on and give you a sight there of the way our curriculum is split up. There are three strands, and the idea here is that they weave together to produce a beautiful fabric like this. I think this is a McLean tartan down here on the right hand side. There's clinical dentistry, obviously, preclinical skills, and then clinics. There are fundamental kind of underpinning or what we call sort of foundational sciences, which again I think you might be sort of familiar with, what we call BAMS, biological and medical sciences. And then there are other disciplines that I think are foundational too. So I would say that a wee bit of psychology or behavioral science is a foundation for your practice, as is a little understanding of certain aspects of social science, the law, some principles of public health, and human factors will be explained in the session in a couple of days' time, which is what I would call organizational science. So I think that I do view these as foundational. Our teaching involves a lot of small group work. It's quite practical. We are aiming for competencies. So we test, assess competency, for example, in communication. We would get our students to really act out certain role play scenarios until they become comfortable in certain ways of communicating, and then assess that during our objective structured clinical exams. So it's quite difficult to do this in a lecture format, and I hope in the next couple of days that we will have a chance to interact a little bit. And I've got one or two, I've got films to show, and I'll be interested in what you think. And that's the way we like to teach. So we don't often just stand up and give sort of facts and so on in a lecture context. We do that, but we also like to drill down and really speak to our students in a social setting to make sure that they are getting a deep understanding. So this, unfortunately, with our trip to Malawi not coming off, this feels a bit like a run through of all the things we could have perhaps taught you, but we're not we're not going to. So apologies for that. My group is the Community Oral Health Group. It's led by two professors of dental public health, Lorna McPherson and David Conway. We have statisticians and epidemiologists. We have a psychologist, and I also have a background in organizational science. And we have people with an education or a kind of pedagogical scholarship specialty. We have a professor of medical ethics. So that's the group. It's quite broad again, and we are research active. So a lot of the things that we teach is underpinned by our research programs and studies. And I am I'm quite old-fashioned in that sense as an academic. I do think there is a real symbiotic relationship between research and teaching. The way our higher education system has gone, they are quite separate. So you tend to have teachers on one side and researchers on the other. But I think our group does a good job of straddling that divide and trying to keep the research feeding into the teaching. So we have research interests across the life course, and so when we teach these things around public health and so on, we draw from child oral health, from our studies in head and neck cancer, and work with care of the older person, and that's just some of our funders and research partners and so on that slide. So I think it's always important, before outlining all these weird and wonderful things around, sociology, to say that I do still place clinical dentistry right at the heart of the educational endeavour, and of course at the heart of working life for our graduates. Preparing for practice is the current curriculum from the GDC, and they have clinical obviously as a big large part of the curriculum, but they have these other aspects as well, and there are different words for what's going on, but roughly that's where my teaching is centered, is communication, aspects of professionalism, management, and leadership. This curriculum is under review, and who knows what the next iteration will look like, but the principles are unlikely to change. There's still going to be a big clinical component, but it's going to be, if you like, surrounded or contextualized or underpinned by a bunch of other learning that we have to pay attention to. So clinical dentistry is just part of the picture, the important part, but just part. And one of the things that, of course, you have to do, even with clinical pathways and treatments, is to manage patients. You have to get them to turn up for a start. You have to get them to consent, so that they have to understand treatment options. There's management around cost and all sorts of aspects like that. But you also manage patients through in preventive pathways. So that's where the health promotion bit comes in. But to promote good oral hygiene for patients and for example for their children, and give them awareness, give them knowledge, and aspects of diet and nutrition would come under health promotion as well as things like smoking cessation and so on. So that's what we mean by patient management and health promotion, and that's the old term in the curriculum for our strand of the teaching, and that's still how we are referred to, but it's a bit wider than that. We also teach our students about population health, so a wee bit of epidemiology, things about demographic changes. Very important, that that dentists know what's happening in the population that they serve and that they treat. There may be new conditions, there may be a changing demographic that means that they're going to have to update their knowledge base and so on. There's all sorts of aspects in there about inequality, which I'll talk about in a minute. We are responsible for the evidence-based dentistry teaching. We don't teach statistics per se, but we teach, if you like, the interpretation of statistical evidence. And we teach research design and study design. Again, very much an underpinning thing that dentists know that their practice is subject to rigorous testing and that it's going to benefit their patients. So that's a strand that goes right through the 5 years for us. I mentioned that we have an ethicist, so yeah, there are obviously legal and professional requirements that we are again responsible for teaching, and I tend to get involved in that in the assessment side with the written exams. Communication really is part of everything, but we do place great store on that, and I'm going to lead really on communication in the next couple of days. So we'll focus on communication with the patient tomorrow, and communication between team members the day after. We have patient factors then as this is really the psychology, if you like. So we have anxious patients, angry patients, we have patients who are smoking and have all sorts of, if you like, behaviours that we might seek to change and so on. So that's what that's all about. And what we call team factors, that's what I'm going to talk about this week, which is really things like leadership, teamwork, communication, and working together as a team to provide safe, quality care. This is a growing kind of part of the curriculum, and so more of that in a while. So that is the little house that we call the PMHP, Patient Management and Health Promotion House. This is how we introduce it to students early on, and we tell them that this is what we're going to be teaching throughout the years. Someone suggested we call this the House of Fun, until it was pointed out that House of Fun, how can I put this carefully, and that House of Fun in some contexts might be viewed as a house with a less than savoury reputation. So we stopped thinking of it in those terms, and then someone else said, well, we might as well call it the House of Pain. But I think it's perhaps not fair to say that the students find all this painful. I would certainly say that students who come back to the school as postgraduate, students working for us, or as teachers and so on, that they get it at that level. Once they're in, say, trainee posts or whatever, they will say to me, all that stuff you talked about with communication with patients and colleagues and the ethics and so on, that's what is involved in practice. Once you are clinically competent, once you have your handpiece skills, you realize that this stuff is absolutely part of integral to everyday practice. And so it all comes together, this house, this big picture eventually. But in early years, I do appreciate students are quite anxious and quite focused on gaining clinical competency, and I have absolutely no problem with that. It shouldn't be any other way. So I'm just going to give a flavour then in each of the squares of the house, or each of the little jigsaw pieces. So patient management and health promotion is one of the strands that run through. You can see some of the things that we talk about there, and we teach basic principles of health promotion, which is really just this idea of enabling people to take control over their health, all aspects of their physical, mental and social well-being. So there's a little bit of that gets taught. And then we do a lot of teaching around Child Smile. Child Smile is Scotland's oral health programme for young people. It was born out of an issue whereby Scotland had amongst the worst decay for children in Europe back 20 odd years ago. And you can see in the red area, which is where we sit in Glasgow, that the mean DMFT was really high, and the dental system was really set up for treatment. And so there was an oral health action plan to try and move to a preventive model for child oral health. The good news story is that the picture has improved overall. You can see the latest data set now here from the government. We have research grants where we are involved in the Child Smile evaluation and research program, so we monitor these data. So it's a fairly positive picture at that level, but inequality remains an issue. So you can see you're in this chart, you're still much more likely, if you're in one of the least deprived areas, to be caries free on arrival at what we would call primary school, aged about 5, than you are in the deprived areas. And so that you can see the social, what we call the social gradient here. So the picture's improving overall within each of these clusters of bars. Oral health is getting better, but we're still failing to address this imbalance across our areas of deprivation. We have this index called the Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation. It's a geographically derived index based on various things like education, housing, jobs, and so on. And so we know where the caries is in Scotland, and we're just finding it hard to address that. So Child Smile operates across the country and under this principle of proportionate universalism, whereby some aspects are for everyone and some are targeted at these areas of with essentially high needs. So we have nursery, well, I say we have, a lot of this has been disrupted by the pandemic, which I'm not going to focus on very much, and can answer questions about that. But we have a supervised nursery toothbrushing program for everybody. And our students get exposure to this, they get taught the principles and why it's there, and they get to observe it and so on. We have stuff that goes on in dental practices, like oral hygiene instruction. Again, fluoride varnish is something that the students learn about and they get to observe. And then we have stuff that's targeted in certain areas of deprivation. We have fluoride varnish in nurseries and schools in certain areas, and we have dental health support workers that families are referred to who go out and work with the families in the home to try and help. And we're increasingly working with the colleagues within the Child Smile programme to try and enhance the community support aspect of Child Smile out in the community, so that families could be referred to wider services, whether it's financial, to do with food security and so on, again to try and put the children on a firm footing. So all of this is part of, if you like, the kind of it links with the health promotion agenda, but also the general public health and population health agenda. So there are Child Smile elements, if you like, in the curriculum that cut through those aspects. And yes, population health, I mentioned inequalities. This is an fairly old chart, but this was the chart that was produced by colleagues at the Glasgow Centre for Population Health, and makes the point that life expectancy for both males and females was an awful lot higher in the leafy West End suburbs. I just stay out here, I'm out here in the if you like, the sort of the nice part of town, just off to the side, I must say, and life expectancy is a lot higher there, and it still remains a lot higher there than it is in the East End. And the map shows the Glasgow Underground, and the idea was that for every stop on the Underground or the Overground that you took heading west to east, that you lost some life expectancy. So again, our students get exposed to these ideas in population health, and they are very much taught that there are determinants of health both at the individual level but also at the social community and up into the economic and cultural levels. So around third year, we will get them to do a community health project where they learn about the community that they're working in at that point in paediatric outreach, and they have to do an exercise in sort of making sure that they understand these, what we call the social determinants of health. So again, where I started, not just teeth, but then not just even individual patients, but up into communities and things like working conditions and so on. So that's the population health, and of course, and so aligned with the fact that there are social determinants, we talk to our students about what type of interventions might have then the most effect. So we teach them about what we call downstream, which is essentially the clinical or chairside intervention, and then upstream, which is where we move towards policy, if you like. We have policies on sugar, policies on alcohol, and various other things like that that are intended to, if you like, stop the dam the stream of poor oral health further up the pipeline. So yes, the students get these little kind of lessons, and they have to talk about upstream, midstream, and downstream interventions towards improving oral health and addressing inequalities. The evidence-based dentistry is what it sounds like. So yes, we will teach the students about the principles whereby systematic reviews here, like Cochrane, are produced, the importance of evidence that finds its way into our clinical guidelines. We have SIGN in Scotland and NICE across the UK, which essentially, of course, is very, very important for practice. And we want our students, like I say, not to be statisticians, but to be able to interpret evidence. So we will get them to make certain decisions in little exercises with written materials as to whether or not, for example, they should place a stainless steel crown versus a conventional restoration. And so we'll show them the evidence, we'll show them the statistics, and we'll get them to say what they think about that. And that's, again, something that lends itself to small group teaching. It's very difficult to teach in a PowerPoint. You really need to make sure that people are getting an understanding. We'll talk about different types of research design, and get them to understand odds ratios and risk ratios, confidence intervals, and so on. So quite good fun, I think, when we drill down into it. But there's a whole program there. And again, with any face-to-face teaching, it would be possible to run some of these classes and see what you thought. Yes, I won't say too much more about what we teach in this area, other than to show you the various building blocks. Because Professor Al Dowie is really in charge of this. But it's important to say, I think, that there are regulatory aspects to this ethical side of to the professionalism teaching, and legal aspects, but really it's about practicing ethically. So Professor Dowie is very good at drawing out from the students what it means to be an ethical dentist, if you like, rather than just to know what the GDC say about, or the GMC say about ethics, or what the law says. I'm quite interested in giving people dilemmas and asking them how they feel they would proceed in a certain case. So we want people to be ethical, not just to know what the ethical rule book says, if you like. Communication, that's really what we're going to be talking about the next couple of days. We very much focus on the verbal and the non-verbal. We do exercises on written communication, and we do role plays on how to have difficult conversations with patients and with colleagues. And that's the next two sessions that I'm going to actually kind of begin to talk about, dealing with complaints, those kind of things. We very much aim for a patient-centered consultation. So the dentist does have, a kind of, well, first of all, the dentist usually has limited time. So they quickly want to get a history, get a diagnosis, work out what's going on, and get a treatment plan, because there's often a lot of time pressure. The patient, however, has feelings, ideas, understanding or lack of understanding as to what's going on, and fears and so on. And so we very much want to make sure that that is attended to. And you do so really through communication skills, through good listening as well, asking the right questions, making sure you are clear, making sure people understand, giving them the opportunity to ask questions, and through a really nice non-verbal kind of style as well. And so that's our model. That's our, I mean, it's in the literature, that whereby any treatment is really kind of a joint thing then between the dentist and the patient. So tomorrow's about that, about that, what the kind of teaching we do, and I'll show you a wee film. I really want to get you to join in. So I've got an idea, I hope it works, whereby once you've seen one of our kind of communication role plays work, that we will do one collectively ourselves. So I'll play the patient and I'll get you to sort of say what kind of questions you might ask me, and we'll see how that goes. I'm looking forward to that, and we'll see if it works across the airwaves. I mentioned then patient factors. Of course, that's all what the consultation is all aimed towards. Really, we talk about adherence. We want patients to essentially start doing some things and stop doing others. So we will focus on things like diet, exercise, oral hygiene, and things like alcohol, smoking. Obviously, there's a lot of sugar down here at the bottom. We teach basic behavioral science. So we tend to teach this model that came from England, from a professor called Susan Meeke, who's currently very busy advising the government on how to get people to maintain their social distancing and things in terms of the pandemic. She's in one of the advisory groups. But so we teach this model, and it's really again about it follows the clinical, if you like, model of diagnosis and treatment. So the idea is you have to work out what the barriers are with respect to people's behaviours. Essentially, that's your diagnostic element in order to come up with the right intervention or the right behaviour change strategy, which would be the treatment. So that's the kind of overview. Again, it does draw from our research. So we have all sorts of, we are doing this, you know, in practice as well as just in educational circles. This is a wee project that's it started off in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and we are trying to work out how to get parents to brush their young children's teeth in the home, because we know that caries develops often before children come to the nursery program, where they start getting toothbrushing on a daily basis. And so this is what I would call a motivational interview model, where you ask the patient, the parent, you know, what's going well with the brushing, what's going badly. You get them to choose maybe issues they're having with these cards, and then you come up with strategies. So this is this idea of kind of, again, the diagnosis and the treatment. And so we feed that into our teaching. We will ask our students to come up with toothbrushing barriers. I think we do that in second year, maybe earlier, maybe first year, I can't remember now, in the introduction to behavioral science. We try to get them to say what you think the barriers are to brushing teeth in the home, and then we match them up with the ones that are coming through the literature and so on, and get them to then think about how they might address these various things. So that's your kind of patient factors. And I'm nearly finished, but team factors is where we're going in a couple of days. And yeah, so non-technical skills is what I really kind of focus on, again, in my kind of research side as well, into the organizational stuff, which is leadership, teamwork, communication. Very important. That it says whistleblowing here, but I think more generally in terms of just speaking up. I'll focus on that in the exercise that I've got for you. That would be just encouraging all the voices in the team to have a say in safety and in quality of the service. This born out of real problems we've had in the UK, whereby, you know, certain voices are suppressed by what you would call poor leadership. I'm not specifically talking about the dental service here, but certainly in the health services more generally. And so there's a big push that people will feel comfortable in in saying if they see something that they don't think is correct or don't think is safe, and that they will be supported in that. So I'm going to talk quite a fair bit about that in a couple of days. Again, it's all in the curriculum. The GDC are very clear about teamwork, good leadership, that people work together. So there are different roles and responsibilities, but that you're all trying to, if you like, kind of what we would say, sing from the same hymn sheet, all working together to achieve the best you can for patients. So this is all what we call, if you like, team factors, management leadership. We have a management leadership session in BDS 5. Again, where we have videos that we sort of show, and we get our students to talk about essentially the planning, the organizing of tasks, and the working together, and so on. And speaking up, like I say, that's a kind of phrase that's emerged in the UK recently, speaking up and listening. And this is a statutory requirement, like I say, but that you have a responsibility to raise concerns about patient risk. But I'm more interested in it becoming like just a fundamental part of who you are as a practitioner. That it's not because the GDC says, it's because you want the best for patients, you want the best for care, and if you see something that you think is not safe, and that could be something maybe about your own performance that you want to talk about, that you feel comfortable and that you're supported to raise that and to have a good positive discussion about that. So again, we actually assess these things. We give role plays where people have to raise a concern, perhaps with a senior colleague in the role play situation. So it's another kind of, if you like, difficult conversation that our students have to have, and we want to see competency in how they approach that fairly, professionally, and trying to achieve a nice outcome, So a wee bit more of that in a couple of days. So that's it. That's the house. And thank you. And I'm obviously happy to engage in questions just now. And I look forward to, like I say, illustrating more on the communication with patients side, and then the communication within teams side in the next 2 sessions.